en la campaña que Jalen Hurts. Ojo, él podría intentarlo por tierra. Va a lanzar el pase. Interceptado, entregó el partido Jalen Hurts. Allá va el regreso, adentro de la 20, de la 10. Los Jets con primera y gol. Filadelfia a punto de perder el invicto.
Yeah, both remaining undefeated and falling. That was the Eagles losing to the Jets. And then earlier in the day, the 49ers losing to the Browns. Hola, ¿qué tal? What's good, everybody? Welcome to the El Huddle podcast, where we celebrate Latino culture, the NFL, and beyond. I'm Will Selva. I am not Marianne Doe, who is that passionate Chargers fan. But I am joined by my hermana, my prima hermana, MJ Acosta Ruiz, fresh from London in the house. What's up, prima hermana? How was the trip?
The trip was great. I will tell you, as much as I love London and loved being there, I was ready. I was ready to come home, to just be at my house.
Well, you were there for 10 days, right?
10 days, it's a long time. It is. But we packed a lot into the 10 days. I feel like I stayed on the LA time zone because sleeping over there was rough. I don't know why. I don't know what was going on.
So for the 10 days, you stayed?
Barely slept.
Okay.
Barely slept.
You stayed in the Pacific
like
time zone.
For sure. For sure I did. It was nuts. So I'm feeling pretty good being back home. Like I'm like, oh, okay, yep, time to go to bed. Whereas like 5 a.m. I was wide awake in LA, in London rather. So it's good. But we got to turn around in a couple weeks and head to Germany, which is going to be crazy.
Yeah, lucky you. And seeing the game on NFL Network, again, great crowd that we saw to watch the Titans and the Bills play each other. What was your takeaway from that game? Because the Ravens are now going to be playing the Lions, who are 5-1 and considered one of the best teams right now, if not the best team in the NFL in some people's eyes.
Look at the Lions.
Yeah.
I'm so excited for Detroit. I'm so excited for this team and for this group. I think it's great. I think it's going to be one of those games where almost like that Jets Eagles game, right? Like we did not expect that. I think we need to be prepared for the unexpected. I still think that the Lions here have a bigger advantage just because they weren't just on the other side of the world, right? Been here in the US playing lights out. I'm excited for that game. That's one I really, really have circled. But I love that you mentioned the viral Chargers fan. She's having a moment, okay?
Yeah, a few moments.
Quite a
yeah. If you see her there on the screen, and people were questioning whether she was a real fan, if she was a plant, an actress, what she was exactly. There was a photo that surfaced of her in a Vikings uniform, and she had said that she supported her kids who played sports, and she's from Minnesota, and she grew up a Vikings fan, and she then moved to LA, had been here for now 20 some odd years. Once the Chargers came, she decided she was going to be this massive fan. And so they kept going back to her with these cutaways.
So funny.
Yeah, during the Monday Night Football game, between the Chargers and the Cowboys.
It's hysterical because I what I loved most about this is all of the multi-purpose memes that have come out from her facial expressions, right? Like there's a whole category of like different. Wow, she was hardcore Vikings. I had not seen the throwback picture of the same glasses too. It looks like, or similar glasses. I love her. Love her for us. Love it for the sports. Anyone who can get that into it and just, she was in it at every beat, every play.
She was. Now, can I be totally 100% here on the El Huddle podcast? Now, she said that she does that during her kids' youth sports games.
Oh, now, I bet it's times 100 out at the Pop Warner Field.
Yes, and as a youth sport parent, and you see some of these parents who get overzealous or who are pushing their kids to be the very best or going after the refs or the umpires. I don't know how that would jive with me. I gotta say.
sports broadcasting career started covering youth sports, youth football specifically. So I know exactly what you're talking about. But I think she's lovely.
Keeping it real here.
The game coverage that much more fun. You know, we love something that we can talk about on social media.
Content.
And I love that it was a female fan, a mom in the stands, like, yes, doing it for us. Going back to that game too, I love that ESPN 2 or Dos simulcasted the Spanish broadcast for that game between the Chargers and the Cowboys. And I feel like, I think those of us here in Nuestra Familia understand the significance of this. Because I just think back to my dad when he first started getting into American football. If he was able to watch it in his native language, how much deeper of an appreciation he would have had. I mean, he still loved it, right? Because it was just so special. But to listen to it and not worry about understanding something or getting a cadence, like, it's a big deal, Will.
It's a huge deal because the same with my parents. They had zero idea about the game and how it impacted me or my brothers as we were watching it. And I do think something like this would help out. Now, there is obviously people who resist the change or resist the fact that it is in a different language, but
it's not for you anyway. So
it's not. And there is a large portion of this population that is like us, that is a first generation Latino, Latina, who grew up either speaking Spanish or grew up in a Spanish speaking household, or just are proud of the fact that they're Latinos and they are hearing and seeing something like this. It's come a long, long way from what it used to be.
I love it. And I think one of the bigger things is the people behind the microphone. And we have one of them joining us. You can hear her voice on Monday Night Football as one of ESPN Deportes locutoras. It's Rebecca Landa, and she is after the break here on the El Huddle podcast.
Sirilam en movimiento. Parecía que entregaban a Pollard, pero es Dak Prescott el mismo entrando al touchdown. Respuesta de los Cowboys.
My heart is so happy, so happy. That voice, esta voz es de la única, the one and only ESPN Deportes locutora. You can hear her on Monday Night Football, but you can see her everywhere. She's also an all-star athlete. Rebecca Landa, welcome to
Rebecca, mucho gusto.
Mucho gusto. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here in the huddle. I see you guys every week on social media, so being here is just really exciting for me.
We're really excited. And for me, like, look, it's I just saw you, I feel like, in London.
Yes.
Rebecca. Yeah. Before that first series that we covered, and between the Jaguars and the Bills. And then I know that you were leaving immediately after to go back to La Ciudad de Mexico to call a Monday night game. I mean, you're all over the place. I love to see it. Could not be happier. But how do you sustain all that you do?
I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure you know, like, we don't sleep as much as we want to. We don't do our hobbies as much as we want to. But the good thing is that we do what we love. So we keep it together. That gives us a lot of energy. And honestly, I feel with a great team. Like, I went and did something amazing. I had never been to London. So being there, getting kind of to see the city, not so much because I had so much work. I barely got to see it. But then coming back and having the support of like the whole ESPN group, all the information, the research sends out. I have a play-by-play coach. I have my football coach, which I see video with him every week just prior to our game. Just like having all of an army that supports me allows me to do kind of everything at the same time.
Increíble, un gran placer del puro mero del DF, Rebecca. It's with the calls in Spanish. We love them because the enthusiasm really is unmatched. We love our English counterparts, no doubt about it. But there's something about the Spanish broadcast that really brings out the excitement, the enthusiasm. Why do you think that is? ¿Por qué crees?
Yeah, I don't know. I think we're just very passionate people in general. Like we do everything like, with so much energy. And I think also we kind of grew up watching soccer or football, so we grew up with the goal. So we kind of always bring that emotion to sport. It's just part of our culture. And I don't know, that's just the way I kind of do it. Like, I love football. Sergio, he's my partner in the broadcast. He also loves football. So it's just kind of like being our most authentic selves on screen, trying to manage our voice and everything, of course. But in the end, just enjoying it.
Right. It's the moments when you're not managing it, right? When like that chispa, that song just comes through because you don't know any other way. Like this is how us as Latinos not only live our lives, but also consume the sports that we love. So I would expect nothing less. And for me, the Spanish calls are my favorite calls, and I'm not shy about talking about it. So you just came off of that Chargers-Cowboys game, crazy game. But a big part of that, speaking of Spanish broadcast, is that the Dallas Cowboys Spanish broadcast team had to call the game from the press box. Now, I have to tell you, this is something that I have seen happen before in other games, other stadiums.
You have,
I have seen this before.
I have not heard about this.
I have seen it. Not a ton, but I have seen it happen once or twice because as both of you know, for those of you listening in, the press box is a work zone. So it is very quiet. They're predominantly writers, beat writers, tapping away, taking like very close attention to what's happening on the field, listening to the PR staffs telling us what's going on, injury updates. So there's a lot happening. So when you suddenly hear not just a broadcast team, but a Spanish language broadcast team on that, to Rebeca's point, with a lot of enthusiasm, you take notice. So for you, you were calling that exact same game. Like, what did you think of that? Like, have you seen it before? Because I know I have.
I'm not sure if I have seen it before. I've maybe heard of it happening before, but I've never been there. And I guess it was pretty exciting, but also that kind of goes to show the passion, right? Like, oh, we don't have a workspace. We're not going to stop. Like, we have to deliver to this big, passionate fan base. So we're just going to make it work wherever. And I'm pretty proud of them for doing that. I know it was kind of like breaching some of the rules, where you're supposed to be quiet because people are like typing and writing and doing their own kind of hits and stuff.
But they're also supposed to have a broadcast.
Yeah, and I guess for people that were working there, it was also like really special to see, we have our very own personal broadcast, Spanish, with very passionate broadcasters. So kudos to them for doing that, honestly.
I think we have a clip here so we can hear it, right, Will?
Yeah, let's go to it.
Prescott, buen bloqueo, Tony Power, tiene un hombre, completo el envío, sector derecho, primera anotación, es Brandon Cooks. Vaya bloqueo de Tony Power, qué bárbaro. Y encuentra al número 3 por el sector izquierdo, 6 puntos para la causa de los vaqueros.
I'm living
for it. And I love that he didn't bring down the volume. He didn't water it down. No. He said, well, this is my job. This is what I have to do. I don't know what the logistics were, so I don't want to jag anybody, but they had a job to do there. I did notice though in the background, everybody else like headphones in.
Oh yeah. No, and they were looking at them like, wait, what's going on there? Well, they're just doing their thing. Say, no me importa del todo. Lo hacemos así. And it's amazing that it didn't stop them at all, Rebeca.
Yeah, no, like I said, they were just like, we have to do our job. There's a very big fan base in Latin America. I'm sure you guys know. El aficionado latino es diehard.
Oh, yeah.
You can't just not give them what they want, especially if it's a Cowboys game or an LA Chargers games where you have so many people in Tijuana, in El Paso. They are all very big fans. So they knew they were having like a big audience as well.
Yep.
I'm proud that they did that, honestly. And like you said, MJ, that they didn't tone it down. They were like their most authentic selves.
Oh, yeah.
They knew they had a product to deliver. And I guess they did it amazingly. And then now they're viral because of what they did. Just amazing.
I love it.
Usando las manos. One thing that I always like to ask our announcers that come on is the terms. whether it's mariscal de campo or using quarterback or a la cerrada, a la abierta, those sorts of terms, or saying a tight end or, a defensive end. How do you decide what terms to use that everybody understands to make it easier for everyone?
Yeah, I honestly try to use like the original because sometimes it's so hard to translate. Like, for example, I don't like the word apoyadores, which is the word for linebackers. Like, I don't like that word. So I like to say linebacker. And honestly, I think it's kind of like the slang of the sport. And there's some things that you can't translate. So I don't know, for like in tennis, you say 40 love. We don't say in Spanish 40 amor. We say 40 love, right? So then those are the things where I feel you have to kind of respect the sport. And if you're a fan, you will understand when I say a sack instead of a captura, if I say a tight end instead of an ala cerrada, a linebacker instead of a apoyador. So like I just try to keep it as honest to the original language of the sport. And there are some things that you can't really just say in Spanish. There are words that are just hard to translate. So I feel it goes, in tune with what I try to do, just keep it as consistent as possible.
To your point too, Rebecca, like the fans, most of the Latino fans, and especially when you're talking about American football, they learned the sport in English, right? But translated Spanish, like we adapted the things. But I have a similar situation with baseball, right? Where obviously a home run is un cuadrangular, but in Dominican Republic, like we still say jonrón. Is that an actual word? No, it isn't. No. It's a term that we made up that sounds like home run. Yeah, well, that's just a really powerful hit. But like, you know what I mean? Like, it was an adapted term that we were like, well, it makes sense. We get what it means. And it just comes from the pronunciation with the accent, right? But we always figure it out and we make it our own. And so I love that you infuse both of those things. It just comes down to like what feels natural to you, right? While you're in the booth, I would imagine.
And then there's sometimes that's so hard. For example, when you see a naked, where they do a play action and then they do a naked. I don't want to say desnuda in Espanol. I'm just going to say it's a naked. It's just hard. Like, how am I going to say desnuda? People will not know what I'm talking about. I'm just going to say it's a naked. Those are the words that you don't want to translate.
Well, how about the fact that tú eres mexicana, right? And there are fans que son de Peru, right? De Colombia. Right. They're from everywhere. Do you ever feel cognizant of your Mexican accent where somebody, say, from Chile is listening to you and they think, well, wait a second, that accent is different. Does that ever enter into your head at all?
Yeah. And it's kind of weird because honestly, I'm Mexican, but a lot of people like always ask me, where are you from? Because your like accent is so different. So my fiance is from Argentina. And
Argentina.
A different part of Mexico. And then I have like a northern accent. It's just kind of mixed all over the place because I also live in Mexico City. So a lot of people don't know where I'm from. And I kind of take pride in that in the way where I'm like kind of neutral. And people don't necessarily say like, oh, she's Mexican. And also I try to like keep the slang down, where I'm not saying Mexican words. I'm just saying like words in Spanish that from Argentina to the US, people will understand. I won't say, for example, padre, está padre. A lot of people maybe won't know what that means. Que chido. Yeah, so a lot of people won't know what that means. So I always try to keep it kind of formal in a way where I'm not using Mexican slang, but more like words that we all understand.
I love the Argentinian accent. I really do. No, por favor, chico. Como hablan. It's the best. It is absolutely the best accent.
Yes, but they have a lot of words that the rest of the world doesn't know. So now I use them like with my friends and family, and they're like, what's canchero? I have to explain, yo te banco, what's banco? So yeah, I don't use those in my broadcasts, but I do use them in real life.
I love it. Sometimes it might bleed over. You never know, but I think the Argentine fans will appreciate that. Now, Rebecca, you became the first woman to call a nationally televised NFL game on Spanish language TV in the US. Okay, period. What does that mean to you? And how do you feel that impacts the next generation of women who are trying to get into sports broadcasting?
Yes. Well, when I first got that opportunity, which was last year, I think it was like week 2, I was so honored, honestly. And yeah, just so I started doing this because I saw that there was a lack of women doing it, and also because there was a lot of resistance to women doing it. So I was like, okay, this is something that is not open. Like, we need to make the space. So having the space to do it, but then also doing it like in most of the continent where people in Spanish and in English could hear me was amazing to me. And it was also a big sense of responsibility to know that, okay, we don't get these opportunities as often. So I need to do a really good job, because if I do, then people will start thinking about, okay, can they be analysts? Can they be play-by-plays? Can they be coaches? Can they be players? You know? And it's been so beautiful to see that. So last year I did 3 primetime games. This year I'm doing all of Monday Night Football games. I did in game, and then I'm doing some of the
qué padre.
postseason games. But the most beautiful thing has been people asking me, for example, in ESPN, like, hey, do you know any women analysts? And that for me was like a big win. They were not looking for me, obviously, because I'm not an analyst, but that's my point. Like, my whole mantra in this whole process is lift as you climb. So I'm climbing, but I also want to bring other women with me. And I've contacted a few of them and said, like, hey, in a couple of years, they're going to be looking for girls or women like you. Make sure you're prepared. This is my play-by-play coach. This is my football coach. This is my this and this. So make sure to be ready if this is something that you want, because I really do feel those opportunities are starting to be given even more now. And that's just the biggest part of this, right? So I'm excited about becoming the first one. It's still amazing to me to think like, okay, it's 2022 in that moment, and I'm becoming the first woman at something. It's just crazy. But the big point is that I'm not the first one. The big point is that how many are coming after me. That's what I want.
It's changed so much, Rebecca and MJ, because I remember Andres Cantor, that he would do the games in studio. He was never on site. And that always blew my mind away. And now it feels like these announcing teams are actually on site. How important is that for the announcing crew to actually be there and to experience the players and the action up front?
Yeah, I know it's huge, just because I noticed the difference. For example, when I do play-by-play for tennis for the Grand Slams, I'm doing it from home. But when the tournaments in Mexico are happening, I go to the tournaments, and that's super different for me. I'm doing Monday Night Football from a cabin in Mexico City, so I'm not traveling. I don't get that chance that you say where you can see other things. I'm literally seeing the same thing the fans are seeing at home. So we just need to, find ways. Now COVID has given us other opportunities. For example, on Sundays, I do NFL games for Centro America, and I do it from home. And the person that I'm doing it with is at his house. He can be in Miami, he can be in Canada, or he can be in Mexico City. And that's another challenge, because you're not even in the same room with them. So once you get to be in the same room with them, that's even better. And if you get to be in the same room with them at the stadium where the game is being played, that's even better. But that's something that I haven't been able to experience just yet. So I'm hoping at some point this season I'll get to travel and then do the game from the stadium. I know it's a big, big difference.
But that's what makes it even more impressive to me. Because so often we feed off of the energy of the game day, of being there, of the fan. Because even if we're in a press box or in a booth, the fans are right there. They're not that far removed from you. You can hear the hits almost just as clear as if you were on the sideline. So the fact that the way you present, and now I guess we're pulling the veil back, right? Like, most people probably thought you were in each stadium. Come to El Huddle, we'll give you all the tricks of the trade. But it to me is I already knew that information, but like for me listening to you, I forget that you're not even there. And that's a testament to your talent, to how hard you work, and to the time and effort that you put into it. One of the things, Rebecca, and I don't know if you've experienced this, right? As a woman in sports broadcasting, covering mostly male sports, the biggest criticism or the biggest opposition that you'll find, that I have found, because I only want to speak for myself here, is like, oh, well, you didn't lace them up in the NFL, blah, blah, blah. You didn't play this. First of all, please spare me. Please use your breath for something more
I didn't say anything.
Not you, Will.
I didn't say anything.
I'm talking about the proverbial you.
Yeah.
Second,
well, proverbial me.
But for everyone who doesn't know, Rebecca is a football player. Mm-hmm. A gold medal winning football player.
Yeah.
So known as Tochito, right? Oh, there she go. We've seen it. Badass. Love it. I love it so much. I love to see it. And yes, that is the same team as our good friend of the show, the Ana Flores championship team. It's incredible. And now we were just talking about it, Rebecca, flag football added to the 2028 Olympic Games in Los Angeles. Still a pretty far ways away, but I know the push that all of you who have played this sport and who have played at the highest level have been making for this. So when you heard the news earlier this week, what was your reaction?
Yeah, so I kind of already knew. I heard of it in London. So it wasn't official yet, you know, the voting had to go through. But we kind of already knew where it was going. So I don't know, it's just, I had time to process it. Let's just say it like that. And I was like, I can't believe it. I can't believe it. I can't believe it. And when it was announced, I had so many mixed feelings because in a way it's like, wow, this little sport that we started playing so long ago that we had to fight for like fields and coaches and jerseys and everything else. Okay, now this is me.
That takes it back. Here we go.
12. Yeah.
Okay, spin move.
Okay,
spin move.
Okay. Rebecca, I see you.
Yeah, that's me, number 12. So I play for Mexico as a defensive end and as a cornerback. So depending on where they need me, I move around on the field. And yeah, that's kind of one of our greatest moments, of course, when we won the gold medal at the World Games against the US, which they had beat us in the World Championship 6 months prior. So it was just like, oh, we needed that. Yeah. So yeah, it was a mixture of feelings just because, you know, this is like this little thing that we have loved forever and now it's going to be huge. People were asking me like, what's the advice you give like to all of the little girls and boys that are now going to be playing and that they can dream about being Olympic athletes. And I was just saying like, never lose the joy for this sport, you know, because when so much pressure comes into it and there's so much expectation, like you start losing focus of why you really do this, you know? So I'm super happy that it's in the biggest stage. I think it deserves to be there. I think it's going to stay there. I don't think it's just going to be for LA 2028. But I do really hope that we never lose the joy of just playing for the pleasure of playing. And yeah, mixed feelings as well, because like you said, it's in 5 years and I don't even know where I'll be. So right now I'm a national team player, but in 5 years, so many things could happen that I really wish it was just be like Paris 2024.
Right.
And I could just go right now.
Can we submit?
Well, hopefully in 5 years, they'll continue to be crushing it. Now, I didn't realize that flag football was called Tochito.
Yes.
Yeah, I had no idea about that. Now, I grew up, and MJ, we always talk about this on the podcast, that we grew up with boxing, with soccer, with baseball. Football was not something that we ever talked about. My parents had no clue about it, let alone if I said, hey, boy, who got a tochito? They'd say, ¿Qué es eso?
What are you talking about?
Tochito, ¿qué es eso? So how did you make that transition to play flag football when there's a big portion of the population that is playing soccer or baseball or other sports?
Yeah. So I grew up in a sports family and my dad was a basketball player and my mom is a tennis player. So we never really were into soccer as like Mexican fans are into soccer, you know, where they stand in front of the TV or they go to the stadium. Like we did taekwondo, tennis, judo, swimming, ballet, ice skating. I did so many other things that had nothing to do with soccer. But I fell in love with American football when I was 8. I saw Remember the Titans. My dad took me to the movies to see it.
Yeah.
Best movie ever. Also, because of my background and where I come from, it was really impactful for me to see how through sports we could generate so much change. And like, that's what the movie taught me, right? So I fell in love with American football. I told my dad I want to play American football. He was like, let's go. So he took me to the local club,
cool.
and they were like, you're too old now. I was like 13. You can't play with boys at this age. We don't have like a woman's. So I'm sorry, you won't be able to play. And I was like, okay. So I just became a big fan of football. And then a friend of mine, knowing this, told me like, hey, I'm going to invite you to my Tochito team. And I was like, what's Tochito? I had no idea. He was like, if you love football, you're going to love Tochito. So I got there and there was a football and there were like these little strings on their waists. And I played and I did really well. Like beginner's luck, you know, where you just play free and it's just all fun and you do really good. And I was 16. And ever since I've been playing flag football. So it's been about half of my life. I'm 32 now.
Wow.
So half of my life I've been playing flag football. And flag is life, honestly.
That makes me so happy.
That's awesome. Like when you watched the movie, was it in Spanish or were there the subtitles? Because hearing Denzel speak Spanish, because he did Man on Fire, his Spanish was pretty good. So if they were able to dub it over, I mean, Denzel's a stud.
That's a question I have never in my life gotten, and I have no idea. I'm guessing it was in Spanish, because by then I didn't know a lot of English. I was 8. I was living in Mexico, you know?
Yeah.
So I'm pretty sure it was translated, doblada al español. I can't remember, but the impact was there.
Right.
Doesn't matter
the story came through for sure.
Yeah.
Your story continues to come through. I have to tell you a couple times here, and I'm glad that my counterpart in Will knows how to sort of even out the energy, because I just listening to you like makes me tanto orgullo just listening to your story, watching you shine. Every time I see you, I was so excited that you were in London when we saw each other on the sideline. It's just a constant reminder that there are more of us out there and that you are forging a path for so many other Latinas who want to do this. So congratulations, mi amiga. Can't wait to see what else is coming for you, because I know it's mucho más éxito than what you've already done. Thanks for joining us and sharing a little bit of your joy and your story here on El Huddle.
Thank you so much as well. And MJ, that you just said to me is also something that you have made me feel before. I remember in the LA Super Bowl, you gave a speech at an event that was called MVP. And I was there and I saw you, and it was just a magical moment for me. Because like you said, sometimes we might feel like we're alone, you know, in this battle. And it's just really nice to know that we aren't. So you've got a friend in me and a teammate in me, all the way from Mexico.
Don't make me cry, Rebecca.
And all the women out there that are listening to us, you're not alone. You're welcome. This is a space for you. You belong in football. So come and join. 100%. There's plenty of space for all of us.
We need you here.
Absolutely. They say, Rebecca, that's my prima hermana right there, MJ. So I know.
Yeah. It was really nice being here with you guys. Thank you so much.
Momento de tensión en el Cleveland Brown Stadium. La patada cargadita al poste derecho y para afuera. Se va a caer el primero de los dos invictos que quedan en la semana 6 de la NFL.
Yeah, that one hurt as a 49er fan to see that take place. That was a 41-yard attempt. Moody, the rookie, missed it. And that was a game that the 49ers could have won. There were some calls. Well, I say because there were a couple of calls that I think went against them that maybe shouldn't have. Either way, the Browns did win the game, and they did so with a defense that dominated and played so well. And Jim Schwartz, who's the defensive coordinator, that guy just has Kyle Shanahan's number. You know, he's 8-1 against Kyle Shanahan. So he's cracked the code, MJ.
Sure, but we also can't forget that the two of the biggest offensive playmakers on the 49ers left the game with injuries, both Deebo Samuel and Christian McCaffrey. Those are two huge holes that
and Trent Williams too.
And Trent Williams, I'm talking that you cannot fill, right? Like that's a significant part of why they continue to have some struggles. It was a tough game, I think, for the 49ers across the board, but to not have the three of those guys on there, now they are expected to be back before Monday's game in Minnesota, which our buddy Federico talked about, sort of a full circle moment for him. But
that's right.
It is, you have to take it in its totality, that game, right? That was one of the games I had to watch back because, of course, the time difference, I was still in London at the time.
Oh,
so if you can imagine, like, I just went through an entire game day, right? 12 hours at the stadium. By the time I got back to our home base, our hotel, the early slate games are barely getting started. If you can do the travel math.
Yeah.
It's a lot. So I had to watch it when I came back. Of course, I'm following along, but I was like, wait a sec. Actually, I watched it at the airport because I had NFL Plus, so I could watch it back. But it's crazy. Like for you, what do you think it was? Many of the things that went wrong for the 49ers in that.
I think to your point, I do think missing those three guys, I think that Brock Purdy did miss some throws that he probably like to have back. And there were some throws that, say, Brandon Ayuk dropped some passes. But again, I got to really say that defense for the Browns is legit. There's a reason why it's a top defense in the NFL. Sure. I think, Myles Garrett and Zadarius Smith, those guys are just beasts. And they handled their business there in the dog pound. And, these are going to be games that early on teams like the 49ers and the Eagles who lost games that maybe they were expected to win but didn't. Sure. So you're going to have those sorts of games, but good on the dog pound for coming away with the win. With the Eagles, there's this concern that now Jalen Hurts, he's throwing a lot of interceptions. Is there something wrong with him? Because the Eagles, while they were undefeated, something hasn't felt quite right with them.
Something's off.
Yeah, something just feels off because at this point last year, they just felt more dominating, right? And where it feels like now the Lions are feeling this groundswell. Now, the Eagles, we talked about the 49ers have to rebound and go play in Minnesota. The Eagles have to play your Dolphins. Like, that's going to be a great game. Like, how the Eagles are going to counter that track meet.
Yeah. Look, I always get nervous when I know that it is a tougher matchup, I think, than like most people expect. But I love the way that the Dolphins have been trending, not just because they are my team, but it just really gives me, that us Dolphins fans are always cautiously optimistic about things, right? Cautiously optimistic. But this year's team, there's just something you can sort of see it. It's similar to the Lions. Like, it's not this like Cinderella story. Oh my God. No, there has been very intentional work put in, not just to the pieces that are on the team, but the way that the team is trending. So you want to swell at the right time. And I see a lot of different things happening, both in the Lions aspect and with the Dolphins, in the way that they are improving throughout the year. And so that makes me very excited and very confident. With the Eagles, you're right. I think even though they were undefeated, it was the way that they were winning or getting those dubs early that I was like, okay, yay, they got the W, but interesting. Not the way I was expecting it, or not even what we're expected to see from what we saw last year of that team that went on a Super Bowl run. So I think context is important. Like, you can't just look at the win-loss column. I think for the people who just saw wins and losses when it came to the Lions last year, didn't pay attention to how they were building throughout the year, how difficult it was for their opponents in every single game, and just how close so many of these games were. So always remember the other layers to the story.
Yeah, well, that's a good way to cap off the show with our y punto, where we put a little bow on the podcast. And for me, my y punto has to be the fact that we have now 6 teams who are on their siestecitas right now, right? 6 teams who are on their buys. I think that's what we're going to call buys here on the Huddle podcast, right? Yeah, they're taking their siestecitas, right? And so we're just seeing week in and week out there's more of these injuries that are piling up to star players or players that have come out of nowhere to really stake their claim on the big stage, like Kyron Williams. He's going to be missing some time. The Rams are going to be facing the Steelers. And we talked about Devon Achane and James Conner. We mentioned them in the last podcast. So again, with these bye weeks, hopefully teams start to catch their breath, are able to get some of their stars back. We can start slowly but surely enjoying them, because right now at this time of year, it's all about maintaining and trying to stay as healthy as possible. That even goes for Josh Allen. We saw got hurt, shoulder injury. It looks like he's day to day, but he's going to try to play through it. So that's my punto there. Let's try to get these guys continuously to heal up, get better, because it just makes the game better.
Yeah, I feel my punto is I feel like we blinked and we're on to week 7. Like, what?
Crazy.
What are you talking about? It's nuts. Like they are I'm sure you know Puma Nelson, one of the great floor managers here at the NFL Network. He's
always coordinates the hats with the suit.
The best dressed floor manager I've ever seen. But he told me a long time ago, he's like, the days are long, but the season is short.
Yeah,
I think the players would argue with me on that point, since they're in it every day and having to get treatment and going back and forth, and there's an extra week of the regular season. But we're talking in the overall sense, it goes by so fast. So enjoy every little piece of this game that we love so much. Take in these moments. Try not to get too upset over things like your fantasy league or leagues for those of you maniacs who have more than 2. I can barely keep up with 2.
Yeah.
Who was it? It was Maurice Jones-Drew who said he was in like 11. I was like, sir, please go sit down. That's
get out of here, MJ.
What are you talking about? But yes, take in the season. It goes by fast. And before we know it, we'll be in Vegas for the Super Bowl watching Usher. I love it for us, Will.
Yeah, I love it too. Love that you are back safe and sound. I know that you're going to be off to Germany here next month. And it looks like you could be on your way to either Brazil or Spain, because we're going to see an international game in one of those spots. It looks like it won't be in Mexico City again, unfortunately, just because they're still renovating the stadium. But either way, great destinations. Cairo Santos, he was on the podcast. He said, boy, it'd be great if the Bears could be in Brazil and I could be there.
Imagine?
So like the pride, something like that would provide, would be amazing. Again, another amazing pod. Prima Hermana, always a pleasure. If you like what you hear, we hope that you do. Download, subscribe, and like wherever you get your podcast. I'm Will Salva. She is my prima hermana, MJ Costa Ruiz. Hasta la próxima vez. Adiós.
Adiós.